The fantasy football trade deadline is coming up. We'll tell you the players that you need to acquire next.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are now the #1 sports podcast network, and today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. He is the Fantasy Football Hall of Famer, Michael Fabiano. And on today's show, we're talking about all of the players that you need to trade for before your league's trade deadline. We're also going to talk about some of the players that have the best and worst fantasy schedules to round out the year. But let's start at quarterback, Fabs. Is there a quarterback out there that you are trying to be aggressive in getting before your league's deadline?
Definitely Jackson Dart. He's back at practice. And so there's a chance that he comes back this week against Detroit, and that is a phenomenal matchup. And when you look at the matchups down the stretch, Commanders, Vikings, Raiders, and those are all in the fantasy playoffs. I mean, Jackson Dart has been an 18, 19 point per game guy at his floor. And, you know, I understand there's concerns about the concussion, but it can't have been too serious if he's potentially going to be back this week. So obviously you want to keep tabs on his status. But again, he's back at practice. And the Lions are a very good defense, but they are also not great against quarterbacks. And maybe part of that is because garbage time points. I think that could be the case for the Giants this week. And Dart, and you know he could run with the football. This is more of a redraft trade than and certainly a long-term dynasty opportunity, because most people are not going to be trading away Jackson Dart in a dynasty league. But in redrafts, I think you could probably get him at a pretty fair price right now. And I love the schedule down the stretch.
So I was actually going to say Patrick Mahomes. That's the guy that I think the Chiefs are just going to have to let throw the ball a ton over the next 7 games or so, because they need to win almost every game the rest of the way forward. And this is what we're going to talk about later in the show, how much the schedule matters. You look at the Chiefs' remaining schedule, we think they could win every one of these games, but you go through the schedule and they play the Colts this week. The Cowboys defense, we'll see what that looks like. Maybe it's better with Quinn Williams. And then it's the Texans, the Chargers, the Broncos. All of those teams have really good pass rushes and they can really cover. So as much as I like Patrick Mahomes, maybe he's not somebody that you should be going out and trying to acquire, because there's no layup games coming for the Chiefs.
Right. The Cowboys, what? That's not a layup game?
Well, it might be. I think the only thing about that one is they did look better against the Raiders, and it's a short week, which I don't know how the Chiefs are going to play in a short week. But
Raiders, Chiefs. I mean, come on, dude. Like, you know,
one game,
you
right?
know what? I can look real fast against an 85-year-old woman, but I am not fast. Let's just put it that way, okay? Like, let's see him do it against the Eagles this week, and then maybe we can start talking about it.
But I think the point is, there's outside of the Cowboys game, and again, I just won't be surprised if Dallas is better on defense. There's not any games that you feel awesome about the Chiefs offense, and maybe that's why you should stay away. Let's talk about some running backs, because I do think this is where I do think the schedules matter, and you can figure out guys that are going to be going up against weaker run defenses or game scripts that are going to be favorable. Who are some running backs that you would like to trade for before the deadline?
Derrick Henry's one of them. And I mean, listen, he's not a superstar right now. I mean, he's averaging, 14 points per game. He's not been great, but that also means that he's not going to be as ridiculously expensive in a trade. He'll be more reasonable. He's got the Jets and he's got the Bengals twice. I mean, like, every Raven on the offensive side of the football has 2 great matchups baked in to playing Cincinnati in 2 different weeks. I think they play him one week, then they play a different team, then they play him again. So that's huge. So, you're not even just talking about Derrick Henry. You're talking about, Zay Flowers and definitely Mark Andrews, guys like that. But Derrick Henry is somebody I think you can get at a discount. The other player is Bucky Irving, and I think you can get him at a discount too, because he hasn't played since week 4, but he's starting to ramp things up. And regardless of who the Buccaneers are playing, they're always seemingly going to be in high scoring games. You could potentially get Bucky back for the fantasy playoffs. And I think that's where you're targeting him. If your team is already going to the playoffs, like, you're going to be there. I'd get Bucky because we don't know exactly what his status is for week 12. But I think at this point, based on them ramping him back up, you should definitely have him in time for the fantasy playoffs. And if you put Bucky Irving on your fantasy team for the playoff stretch, that is a big win. And so I'd try to get him now before we start hearing he's back and et cetera, and his value starts going through the roof. I would try to get him right now.
I want to ask you about Saquon Barkley because he's been one of the league's least efficient running backs. I put out a chart yesterday.
Oh, you don't say.
Well,
I wonder who talked about that in the preseason.
Don't hurt your arm too much by patting yourself.
I'm kidding with you.
He super unproductive this year. Now, the schedule does get a little bit easier. Cowboys, Bears, Chargers the next 3 weeks. And then listen to this schedule to round out the year. Raiders, Commanders, Bills, Commanders. None of those run defenses are very good. Now, the Eagles are going to be without Lane Johnson for the remainder of the season. He's dealing with a Liz Frank injury. Is Saquon somebody that you would trade for now because of that playoff schedule?
No question about it. And I have been down on him. And to this point, the predictions have been pretty spot on. Again, he has not been efficient at all, but that is a very good schedule. He's got the third easiest strength of schedule among running backs. So, yeah, I would go out and get him. But I also, in Dynasty, I don't want to pay too much because, again, I mean, this is the beginning of the end for Barkley, I think. Next year he's 29, then 30, and then you never know what the heck's going to happen with a running back at that age. But in redrafts, if you can get him, for a relatively fair cost in a trade.
What would be fair? Like what is a
right, so let's say that you're making a trade with a team that needs a wide receiver. Ted McMillan, Emeka Egbuka, redraft, not Dynasty, redraft. Guys like that. If you're looking for a tight end, I mean, then you can go to kind of the top of the line. I mean, like, Brock Bowers. I don't know if I'm going McBride because McBride is just nasty, and Bowers' schedule is not great down the stretch. But you could potentially do something like that. If you're looking for a quarterback, which would be weird, I don't think I'm trading Saquon Barkley for a quarterback, just because of the nature of the positions. But I'd want a pretty high end, good, solid starting quarterback, maybe like even his teammate Jalen Hurts. But now is the time to go out and get him because the schedule is very, very favorable, and he's already kind of not played great. And so let's see now, starting with the Cowboys this week, if that turns around.
The most common trade right now for Saquon Barkley in dynasty leagues is Saquon for a 2026 first-round pick. And
it's
again,
too much, bro. It's too much.
Yes and no, because I think in a vacuum, I agree with you. It is too much. But if you're trying to win your championship this year and you feel like you're one of those top 4 teams, right? And your pick is projected to be, in that 9 to 12 range, I don't hate it because, again, the goal is to win championships.
But that's right. And that's the only scenario where I'd think about it.
Right.
If I need that running back to kind of put my team over the edge and get to that championship, then I would definitely be thinking about it. But otherwise, I'm going to pass.
You're basically renting Barkley for the next 6-7 games and then 2026. And that's it. So that's the price that you're paying for basically, what is that, 22, 23 games of Saquon Barkley. It's a little rich, but I don't hate it. Again, if you just need a running back and you want to pair Saquon Barkley with your Jonathan Taylor the rest of the way, I'm okay with it.
Also, too, if your team is on a track to get to the postseason, then maybe that first round pick is not going to be very high.
That's the point, right? It might be pick 11, right?
That's also a good reason. Again, if you're a team that's contending and has a shot to win now, and you just need that one more player to put you over the edge.
All right, let's talk about Saquon Barkley's teammate, A.J. Brown. He's been mostly a dud for fantasy purposes this year, but can you trust him the rest of the way? We'll tell you next. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every single day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season whether you're following the NFL, the NBA, or both, there has never been a better time to jump in on the action. And if you haven't tried it yet, Prize Picks is the simplest way to play. All you have to do is pick more or less at least 2 player stats. And if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere that Prize Picks operates, including Texas, Georgia, and California. I love using Prize Picks on football Sundays, and then all week long, we've got NBA action. It keeps every game exciting. Plus, if one of your players leaves with an injury, they have the injury reboot that saves your lineup from a loss. No one else is doing that right now. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We'd also like to thank you for making us the #1 sports podcast network. Fabs, let's talk about some wide receivers that we want to trade for ahead of the deadline. A.J. Brown, he's got a very favorable schedule. Can you trust him moving forward?
I don't know, but no risk it, no biscuit. And the same goes for DeVonta Smith, who has been better than A.J. Brown, but that's not saying much. And I get it. A.J. Brown has already told us that, he doesn't even think we should have him on our fantasy teams, which doesn't make me feel great. But look at the schedule. He's got the Cowboys this week, and you and I will disagree. I don't care what they did against the Raiders. And by the way, Trey Tucker still had a good game. They got the Bears. They got the aforementioned Raiders. They got the Commanders. 2 of those games are in the playoffs. Yeah. Is it a risk? I mean, yes, it is a risk. It is. But again, no risk it, no biscuit. And I'm not giving up a lot for A.J. Brown. What are you giving up for him right now? He's not got that much value. And so you can buy low on him, put him in your lineup, and hopefully, he pops in 2 or 3 of these games. And that's hopefully all you're looking for. The Commanders' defense is very bad. The Cowboys' defense against the pass is very bad. You can beat the Raiders through the air. Obviously, you could beat the Bears through the air. So, and the Eagles are, a playoff team that's wanting to get that #1 seed. So they're in it for the stretch run. This is a risky move. I understand, but I will do it. And DeVonta Smith is also in that mix, obviously, too, because he has the same schedule moving forward as A.J. Brown. So maybe you trust Smith a little bit more and you want to go in that direction. But I don't think it's a bad move based on the discount you should get for A.J. Brown to go out and get him based on the slate.
I want to give you 2 trades that are happening right now in Dynasty Leagues. Number one, the most common by far, is A.J. Brown for a 2026 second-round pick. And again, if you're contending and you're going it for it this year, I have no problem making that move at all, because you're talking about maybe the 23rd or 24th pick in a rookie draft. I would do that all day long.
I don't have any issue with that whatsoever. That's probably, well, not probably, that is as high as I'll go. No way you're getting a first-round pick out of me for A.J. Brown based on how bad he's played this year and the age issue. So he's sneaking up on 30, but second-round pick in Dynasty, absolutely. In a redraft, let's look at, some potential trades that, somebody may want to make, 1-for-1, for example. I mean, you're not looking at a high-end player for A.J. Brown, maybe, like you were in the past. You're looking at more of an RB2 type, right? Somebody who's going to put up good numbers, isn't going to put up great numbers, maybe isn't, super consistent. I guess like a guy like a DeAndre Swift, you could potentially throw him into that conversation. Someone on that level. Maybe you go after Ken Walker because, both players have kind of not been good this year. And, that also would be a trade that makes sense.
2 other ones on Dynasty League football that I wanted to ask you about. These are pretty clear. You can tell what's happening. It's A.J. Brown for Garrett Wilson. So that's clearly a tanking team taking on Garrett Wilson, because he's probably not going to play again this year, and giving up A.J. Brown. There's that one. Then there's also this one, Travis Hunter, which is the same thing. Travis Hunter for A.J. Brown. Hunter's out for the year. You're buying low on him, giving up an asset now. I think those trades make sense from both sides. I think the teams getting Hunter and Wilson are going to be a lot happier with these trades down the road. But I also understand the A.J. Brown side of it as well.
Yeah, I'm and assuming that you're correct, and I think that you would be, because why would you make those trades otherwise? Again, it's the same kind of thing. It's like a Saquon Barkley. You're trying to win now. You've got a shot to get to the championship, and you look at Brown's schedule; it's pretty favorable. And you're throwing away a young piece that maybe you have depth and you don't need necessarily.
Yep.
And you're trying to get that championship this year.
How about Jalen Waddle? Is he somebody down the stretch that you would be interested in?
Yeah, no doubt about that. And Waddle's coming off a bad game, and it was one of the worst games he had all year, and it was against the Commanders, which made no sense to me whatsoever. I was so frustrated, that Waddle had a bad game. But now, they're on a bye, Miami, so maybe out of sight, out of mind. Maybe you can get in there and make a trade for him. I just traded for him in the Allison Chains league that I'm in. I traded away but Kamani Vidal and Dallas Goedert, and I got back Jalen Waddle because my trade partner needed tight end badly. And he needed a running back too, so I threw him that. And I don't know if Amarian Hampton's coming back after this bye week. I don't know. I haven't heard
That's
good
weird.
things about it, but we'll see. Hopefully that's not the case. But Waddle's the guy I want, because for the most part, since Tyreek Hill's gone down, he's been awesome, right? I mean, there have been a few bumps in the road, but most of the time he's been very good. Look at the schedule, Marcus. Saints, Jets without Sauce, Steelers, Bengals, Buccaneers. That's a pretty good slate. And it's in the top 10 in terms of the best rest of season schedules for wide receivers. And I know the targets are going to be there, so I'm going to go out and get Jalen Waddle now.
I got another receiver that I want to ask you about. What about Jameson Williams, who you've been very high on?
Yes.
You look at their schedule.
Oh, so good.
They play the Giants this week, which is a very favorable matchup. Now, they play a lot of good defenses coming up, including the Packers, the Rams, the Steelers, and the Vikings can be pretty decent in that stretch. But none of them are so dominant that you feel like the passing offense isn't going to be able to thrive. I think that game against the Eagles, it was just like the perfect storm. It was outdoors against a really good defense. Now they play, I'm looking at the schedule now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 of the last 7 games are all in domes.
Yep.
I would think Jameson Williams is going to go off.
Yeah, the problem though is that that window for getting him on the cheap is gone, because he's had 16 plus in 3 of his last 4 games. So he's gotten hot. And now any smart fantasy manager knows that with Sam Laporta out, that means more opportunities for Jameson Williams, because they don't have, Brock Wright. I mean, come on. So you in Dynasty, he's going to cost more now. And I mean, like, it is what it is. You missed your window. In redrafts, let's say somebody's looking for, a running back in exchange for Jameson Williams. I'm not saying you're going to have to give up an elite player, because I certainly don't believe that's going to be the case. But I mean, you're going to have to give up a pretty good running back to get Jameson Williams, based on how hot he has been lately. Like, I could see Quinshawn Judkins, who actually has started to slow down a little bit. I'm kind of bummed out about that. Someone, I mean, I can even say Derrick Henry. A Derrick Henry for Jameson Williams trade right now, straight up, is 100% fair. 100% fair. And because Williams is hot and the opportunities are going to be there and the schedule is very favorable. So you're not going to get him on the cheap now, Marcus. Again, that window is closed.
But that's okay.
I still go out and try to get him? Yes.
Yeah, you can still pay a premium price to get him, and it might be worth it, because number one, the Lions are going to be competing to win this NFC North. I think they're going to be highly aggressive on offense. All of these games are indoors. All of these games are going to have high point totals over on FanDuel. So you might as well go get, I know he's the number 2 receiver. You might as well go and get him now, because I do think a bunch of big games are coming down the pipe. We should also mention with Sam Laporta, he's on the injured reserve list. He's going to miss, I believe it's the next 3 games.
3 more games at least.
Yeah. And the word is, I think from what I saw on Twitter, it's a cracked vertebrae, which is,
ouch.
Yeah. I don't think he's going to be back here anytime soon. And that just means even more targets are going to be funneled to Jameson Williams.
Yep. Yeah, no doubt. I've been on him for a month. I traded for him in a couple of leagues, 3 or 4 weeks ago. And it's been nothing but beneficial so far.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the players that have the best and worst fantasy football schedule down the stretch. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's not a better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or if you just want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who's going to score the next bucket to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late game push. And we're getting into one of my favorite times of the sports calendar. We've got football all week long. We've got college football games, bowl games. We've got the NBA going on every single day. There's so much to bet on, and you can do it over on FanDuel. And right now they have an incredible offer. New FanDuel customers can get $300 of bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head over to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every day. All right, Fabs, let's run through the schedule here. Which quarterbacks have the best and worst fantasy schedules down the stretch?
So I'm going in order here, not skipping anybody who may or may not be fantasy relevant, but Lamar Jackson has got the easiest schedule. Tua is next. And do we trust Tua? No, but
Miami's playing better at least. They're more confident.
If you're in a super flex league and you need a second quarterback, you could probably get Tua at a relatively decent price. So, and then Jackson Dart, who we've talked about, really good schedule, especially if he's back this week. If you throw Detroit into the mix, I love Jackson Dart, that. And then the quarterbacks with the worst rest of season schedule, like the worst is Geno Smith, but who cares because no one's starting Geno Smith. If Geno Smith can't have a good game against the Cowboys, then forget about him. Throw him in the trash. But they play the
Browns this week, which is not great.
No, the last two guys are interesting, and maybe players that you want to trade away in redraft. Justin Herbert, who Marcus has been dead nuts on. I mean, he's just been right on it. Herbert, since Joe Alt's gone down and the offensive line has lost its mojo, has really hurt that offense. And Baker Mayfield. And Baker's got a bad matchup this week too. So Herbert's still a big name. He's on a bye and may make it tough to trade him away. Baker, listen, now is the time in redrafts where I don't want players like this.
No.
Who are facing tough matchups every week, and I got to figure out whether or not I want to play them. Would I flip Baker Mayfield for Jackson Dart right now or Justin Herbert? I got news for you. I just might.
What about at the running back position? Which running backs do you love the rest of the way?
Trevion Henderson's got the easiest strength of schedule among running backs, but what does Mike Vrabel do when Ramondre Stevenson comes back? And if he goes back to Stevenson, I am going to swear like a freaking sailor. Okay. I mean, you got to be kidding me if he does that. But Henderson's been nails. Quinshon Judkins has got a really favorable schedule, and he's not been putting up great numbers lately. So maybe you could buy low on him. And then the aforementioned Saquon Barkley also has a very favorable schedule down the stretch. We talked about him. The running backs who don't have great schedules down the stretch. Tony Pollard, who's basically become irrelevant in fantasy. Can you believe that? Jonathan Taylor. Now, I don't care, okay? I am not trading him. There ain't no way. I don't care who he's playing. 85 Bears, I'm starting him. DeAndre Swift, speaking of the Bears, that's a player I would trade. Why? The numbers have gone down in 4 straight games in terms of his fantasy points. Kyle Monin, guy's getting more burn. He swiped a touchdown last week, and the matchup's bad the rest of the season. So DeAndre Swift is a player I would want to get rid of right now.
I think they play Pittsburgh this week. They still have 2 games with Green Bay left in the schedule. I think there's a game with Philadelphia left. It's not going to be easy for DeAndre Swift, so I'm with you. What about at wide receiver? We talked about Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams. We talked about A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith. Is there another player out there that has a very favorable fantasy schedule?
By the way, just before that, I offered Rashee Rice to someone who you guys know if you listen to the radio. I'm not going to mention his name, for Amon-Ra St. Brown, and he thought I was absolutely insane. What? Rashee Rice and Amon-Ra St. Brown are really close in value. In fact, I would suggest that a straight up deal between those two is 100% fair. Anyways, Wan'Dale Robinson, the Giants.
I love that you're using the podcast to make trade offers. This is great.
Well, maybe some people out there listening will hit me up on Twitter and be like, "You're drunk, Fabiano. No way I would do that." Or somebody would say, "Yes, I'd rather have Rashee Rice." Anyways, Wan'Dale Robinson, and that's a guy that I've been telling people to go out and get for weeks now. The Giants' schedule is very favorable. That's why Jackson Dart's on the list. But Wan'Dale Robinson's not the sexiest dude in the world. I'm sure he's a very handsome guy, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
He is a player that you can get for a relatively good cost. He's not going to cost a lot.
No.
And he's getting 8-9 targets minimum a week. Jackson Dart appears to be close to coming back. And the schedule is really good for Wan'Dale. So, he's a player that I would want to go out and get. In fact, I've actually made some offers to try and get Wan'Dale Robinson to be like my, wide receiver 3 flex. The wide receivers with the worst schedules, Trey Tucker, who doesn't have much value, Michael Pittman Jr., who, again, I don't know if I'm trading him, but he's been so good. If I've got an opportunity to go out and get, maybe a Jameson Williams for Michael Pittman Jr., I may think about that. I might think about it. And then Emeka Egbuka, and, whenever Chris Godwin comes back, Ibuka's schedule is bad too. And Egbuka, as great as he was in the first half of the season, folks, he's been wicked up and down lately. And so I'll give you a trade scenario. Emeka Egbuka or Ted McMillan rest of the season, redraft Marcus.
Ted.
I know you like Ted better in Dynasty.
Ted.
Yeah. And he's got a great matchup this week. Yeah. He had a huge game last week. So don't be afraid to trade some of these players away because, they've put up big numbers. Redraft I'm talking about. Because now what is your focus? What's your focus right now? Weeks 12 through 17. That's your focus.
So let's go to the tight end position. And this one's a little harder because there's a lot of injuries right now, and tight end matchups are sometimes harder to predict. But is there a guy or two out there that has a favorable schedule that you would actually want to acquire?
Yeah, I want Mark Andrews. In fact, I traded for him in a league like 3 weeks ago, and I traded him. I traded away Bill Krosky-Merritt for that. That one worked out really well. He's got the Bengals twice on the schedule. The Bengals.
And Joe Burrow might be back for both those games, which could increase the scoring a little bit.
And I still I could watch that play that they ran last week where he ran for that touchdown all day long. It was great. The Dolphins tight ends have great matchups, but who cares because they don't have one. Detroit, Sam Laporta, maybe when he comes back. If he comes back, I don't know. But then Dalton Kincaid, I don't know the extent of the injury. And we know he's not playing this week. But if you could get him wicked cheap right now, the schedule is very favorable for Dalton Kincaid. The problem is there's a little bit of risk there because of the injury. So we're not exactly sure when he's going to be back. Among the tight ends with the toughest schedules, and there's 2 huge names on here, Brock Bowers and Arondé Gadsden, and then Zach Ertz is third.
Yeah.
Brock Bowers is not a player I really feel comfortable trading away. I don't care what the schedule is like. I don't. But if I have another tight end that I can utilize on a regular basis, I may be trying to sell high on Gadsden. I know Marcus agrees with me here because he's down on the Chargers offense. That could be a player that you still get value for. And if you don't need him because you've already got another good tight end, maybe you have Mark Andrews, I'd go ahead and flip Arondé Gadsden right now. Or you wait until the Chargers are off their bye, getting closer to that if your deadline is maybe week 13. Most of them are week 12, the default ones. But if you've got an extended one, maybe you could trade him next week. But I'd try to trade Arondé Gadsden right now if losing him doesn't kill you at tight end.
Real quick on Brock Bowers. I'm okay trading away Brock Bowers, more so in redraft leagues and dynasty leagues, but I wouldn't be afraid to trade him away in a dynasty league if you can secure one of the top 6 or 7 tight ends with him. Like if you can get Colston Loveland and something else. And the reason why, especially for this year,
I'm shocked.
Well,
I can't believe it.
I
know you love Bowers.
I do love Bowers. I don't trust Chip Kelly's offense. It seemed like last year with the Raiders, even in bad matchups, they were finding ways to get Bowers 10 to 12 targets a game. That's not the case this year. Like there's just these games, like the Denver game is a perfect example. He got 3 targets in the first quarter and then none the rest of the way. Chip Kelly he's not a guy that's just going to lean on a couple playmakers to carry the offense. And this is, I think, one of his biggest flaws. And this is why I love guys like Sean McVay. They're going to recognize their talent. Hey, we've got Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua. Let's funnel 25 targets combined to those 2 guys a week. That's not Chip Kelly. And I think that's why Chip Kelly is going to be looking for a new job next year.
Pete Carroll maybe too, because they have not improved one iota, and bringing in Geno Smith was a dumb idea.
And I think they might actually be worse. And Brock Bowers he's healthy now, but he's just not getting that much action. And some of the targets we watched that game last week against the Cowboys where they're lining him up as a receiver and like throwing him 4-yard out routes. Like that's not
And
the
they're
way to
not
use
running the
routes.
ball with, the guy they drafted in the top 10. Stupid. Makes no sense to me.
It's just an offense that I want to avoid for the rest of the year if possible. All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Check out the channel on YouTube. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Fabs on Twitter at Michael_Fabiano. I'm at Marcus_Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.